We're thrilled to have Jackie Forrest on the line with us. I'm going to throw it over to Jackie to introduce herself, and and then we can kind of get in. If there's any questions or any questions that come from the audience, just please use the Q&A, and we'll be able to record them. But I'll throw it over to Jackie to introduce herself.
Right. Thanks, Shawn, and happy to be here. Well, I'm from the ARC Energy Research Institute, which is an integral part of ARC Financial. I lead the research group, and we cover the outlook for energy, whether it be oil and gas or clean energy. We have a focus on Canada, but we're also watching, especially when it comes to clean energy, what's going on in the US. And of course, when it comes to oil and gas, we have to watch not only what's going on in North America, but the global market. So happy to talk about any topics as it relates to energy, and that includes prices, but also policy.
Awesome. Yeah, so we got a couple questions that came in pre the meeting. So let's just kick it right off, and again, encourage the audience to jump in and ask anything. But what's your view on oil and gas prices, Jackie, as you see kind of, it's been a crazy, I would say, a couple of years, but yeah.
Yeah, right. It's really hard, obviously, to predict oil and gas prices if over the last 2 or 3 years, all these events that have occurred that make it sometimes hard to predict, but people still want to know. So yeah, we do have a view on both of those. I will just give you some context to the last 3 months or 4 months. I mean, we sat around $70 for most of May and June. But in July, things popped up. We're over $80 today. And, we believe the market's starting to recognize the tightness that's already here, and it should stick around towards the end of the year. We really do have quite a tight market when you consider those OPEC cuts. And because this recession hasn't really occurred yet, demand still is quite strong. The market looks very, very tight. In fact, we may be actually having inventories go down to the range of 2 million barrels a day, because that's how much more we're consuming than we're producing in the second half of the year. So the fundamentals are looking quite good. There's, other things that have been supportive is things like, Russian production maybe showing signs that it's starting to be constrained, as well as the OPEC cuts. So I think that looks quite good. I would just caution you, as we look into next year, there's actually a lot of non-OPEC supply coming onto the market. And even if we don't have a recession, it looks like there could be enough supply that OPEC can't really increase their production very much. So we are really reliant on OPEC right now, and I think we will be even into next year. But as long as OPEC continues to cut and keep the market tight, I think prices can stay in the band that we've lived in here, the $70 to $80 range. And there's potential for even higher prices into this quarter and next, because there is such market tightness, and inventory levels are actually fairly low already and could get drawn down even more. So it's looking quite constructive. And that's really what the market started to recognize here in the last month on the oil. On the gas, it's struggling here in North America. If we went to this time last year, we had something like $8 or $9 gas at Henry Hub. I think we're at about $2.66 as of today at Henry Hub. We're suffering from the fact that we had a big glut that was created last winter because of the warm weather, and because of an LNG export terminal that was out of commission that reduced the LNG exports over what was expected. I think it could take good part of the rest of this year and even into next year to work this glut off. The thing with gas prices is weather can make a big difference. If we get a very cold winter, that could change. But right now, our view is gas prices are probably going to be pretty challenged here the next 9 months or so. But if we look out a bit longer term, we do think it's pretty constructive for gas in North America. We got a lot of LNG exports coming. Producers aren't drilling as much as they used to. In fact, they're curtailing their drilling right now because of the low prices. So we do think longer term, it looks quite constructive.
Nice. Okay, well, that's good insight. I think that is a very good way to break down, which I think can be a complicated, how do they even get gas? How do they get oil and gas prices? So the next one that we talked about, that was asked, so Canada just struggles with wide and volatile price discounts just because lack of capacity, or so pipelines. What are you guys seeing for that coming in the future for Canada specifically?
Well, it has been a really difficult 10 years. It just seems we've really suffered a lot from production growing more than our takeaway capacity. And as soon as we get new takeaway capacity, we grow and we're short again. We do think that things are looking more constructive as we look forward. On the oil side, everyone knows the TMX pipeline, the pipeline that's going to go between Edmonton and Burnaby, BC, is very close to being complete. The expectation is that we'll be operating next year, and that should give us surplus takeaway capacity on the oil side, something we haven't had in a long time, and that should enable us to have more predictable differentials and less volatility in that, and that's going to be welcome news. The other thing that's helpful is, although the oil industry continues to grow, it's not growing at the pace it was before. So hopefully that additional capacity will last us for some time. So the oil's looking much better. On natural gas, we've suffered as well. I mean, those have been following AECO prices, the Alberta natural gas price. It's been very, very low since 2017, sometimes trading like $1 and at a big discount to American prices. Things have already gotten better this summer. There was quite a bit of expansion work. It was called the 2021 expansion, but it didn't finish until recently. But that's already helped this summer in terms of avoid some of the big discounts as we did maintenance work and allow gas to get into storage, which was a problem in other summers. So that's already better. And looking forward, we have things like the Coastal Link coming in 2025, maybe even sooner, which is going to create a whole bunch of additional takeaway capacity for Western Canadian gas. So that combined with the fact that producers aren't growing as rapidly as they used to, I think things will be better, or hopefully our differentials will be a lot more predictable and less volatile. But that is still on the come. I think over the next few years, we'll see those changes, and that'll be a welcome relief for Canadian producers.
Excellent. So that ties in well with the previous question too. So you can see that there's hope, and we'll see where it lands. I want to shift a little bit, just clean energy and the capital that's being spent on projects for that. How does that compare to oil and gas, and like where is that clean energy capital being spent?
Right. Well, it may surprise people, but $1.1 trillion globally was spent on what's considered to be clean energy. And compare that to oil and gas, that was like less than half of that. So clean energy is already a very significant thing. In terms of where that's spent, about over 500 million, almost half, is being spent on renewables and wind and solar, and they continue to grow each year. I think they grew something like 20% year on year last year. But it may surprise you that almost equal to that today is electric cars. So electric cars spending got close to 500 million last year and grew something like 50% year on year. So electric cars have really hit the tipping point, and we're really starting to see significant capital investment in that sector. And that includes things like the infrastructure to support them as well. So we think that electric cars are going to continue to grow and probably be larger than renewables in the next year, if not 2 years. So it is a significant thing. There's lots of real money going into some areas. Now, there are lots of areas that are still nascent and still very little capital spending, even ones we talk about a lot. For example, hydrogen gets talked about a lot, but last year only $1 billion of CapEx went, $1 billion, of CapEx went into that. Things like battery storage, I think, is something like 15 billion, CCS, something like 5 or 6 billion. These are areas that I think are set to grow. The policy's supportive. And I think over the next few years, they're going to become much, much bigger areas as well, but they're fairly small as of 2022.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a staggering amount of capital for an industry. So that's great. A bit about greenhouse gas emissions. Are oil and gas producers actually reducing it? Like, is there stats out there? Is there data? How about that? And then do you have it in the US as well?
Right. Well, so for Canada, yes. If you go to the latest national inventory report, you will see the changes in emissions. Big change for oil sands from 1990 or even 2005 till now. And we also have reductions in conventional oil and gas as well. And I think more to come. As you know, the Alberta government, but actually the federal government's required this, so this is required in all jurisdictions in Canada, is to reduce the methane emissions associated with oil and gas production. And for conventional production, that's where the vast majority of the emissions are coming from. It's coming from either methane being vented, flared, or just leaking. And there's very strict regulations that are requiring producers to go in and change the types of equipment they use, change the types of valves that no longer emit methane, but emit air or use electricity. And so the Alberta government actually just put out a report showing the reduction in methane emissions just within Alberta by their counting, and what their expectation is with the mandates that are out right now, which are targeting partial reduction. The end goal for the federal government is a 75% reduction by, I think, 2030. And we're expecting new rules coming to get us there. So, even the rules we have today have already made a big difference. So yeah, the intensity of our emissions is changing, but I will say one thing that's pretty important is that we still are increasing the absolute amount of our emissions in many cases, even though the intensity of each BOE that we produce, or each barrel of oil we produce, or each cubic foot of gas is going down. Because we're increasing our production, if you go look at the absolute emissions from the oil and gas sector, you will still see some growth in Canada. And that's because the production is growing. And so that's causing the absolute emissions to go up. I think that trend is going to start to change as well, though, especially if we start to see some of these big carbon capture storage projects move forward, as well as, the methane rules. When it comes to the US, I haven't tracked their oil and gas as well. They just recently came out with their methane rules. And so I kind of expect that you wouldn't see sort of the same trends in the US so far as Canada. But I do think that because of those methane rules, they're probably going to start to see some decent reductions in their oil and gas sector as well.
Yeah, that again, a staggering percentage. If I had one thing that out of all of that, like 75%. So the spending better be there, I guess, right, from the previous question to get there. So
yeah, for sure.
Last one that I kind of got here is just considering the demand outlook for oil and gas. How long does it take, to make sense and to keep spending money on oil and gas wells? So we got all these other sources of energy that we've talked about, and the spending on them, and what it's doing for outcomes, and just, do you have any insight into that? Like, how long it makes sense to be spending on oil and gas?
Well, it's a question that I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about, even in terms of your own careers, and especially when you kind of keep hearing that we're going to get off oil and gas. Our view, there's lots of scenarios out there in terms of the future of the demand for oil and gas. And I'll just refer to some done by the IEA, which is a fairly well-respected agency, and a lot of people look at their reports. They do put out a fair amount of public information about their reports as well. But they have 3 scenarios about the future of oil and gas demand. And one is called the net zero scenario, which is pretty drastic. It's basically going from today over 100 million barrels a day of oil demand down to something like 30 by 2050. So really drastic reduction. They have one called the announced pledges, which is if every country meets in full and on time their commitments, like net zero 2050 commitments that have been made, and the commitments to the Paris Agreement. Then in that case, we'd see something like a 40% reduction between now and 2050. And then there's the kind of business as usual. They call it the current policies, or the stated policies. And that one actually sees oil demand stay fairly steady between now and 2050. So, wow, what a wide range of potential outcomes to think about, right? So we've done a fair amount of work to look at what's really possible. When you think about the threats to oil demand, for example, the biggest threat is electric cars. And we modeled, the global fleet and how fast you could move the over 1 billion vehicles that are combustion engines today into electric. When you consider the fact that, we have to ramp up the supply chain to be able to build enough electric cars, and that only, cars that are on the road, actually the existing combustion engine vehicles that are sold this year are on the road something like 20 years. So it takes a very long time to change out the existing fleet and to move in the new electric fleet. And so when we consider a very aggressive adoption of electric cars, along with some pretty aggressive reductions in the other sources of oil demand, because remember, light duty vehicles is only about 30% of all oil demand. And actually, we don't have commercial alternatives to oil in many of the other uses that we have today. For example, we don't have like a Tesla-like company offering planes or ships or railway cars or railway engines today that use an alternative. So it's hard to see how those come down so fast when there are no alternatives to oil. So in our view, that 30 to 40% reduction by 2050 is sort of the floor for oil demand. We really have a hard time seeing how it can happen practically any faster than that. And in that scenario, you actually still need ongoing new investment in oil and gas, believe it or not. It seems like still a fairly big reduction, but as many of you probably appreciate, the existing oil and gas wells that we have today decline faster than that. So even in that type of scenario, you still need ongoing capital expenditures on oil and gas in order to meet the consumption that people will have. So we think over the next 20 years, there's still ongoing need for significant investment in oil and gas, even in that kind of floor case. And we'll need people and in the industry to do that.
Well, that's exciting. Great segue. So Jackie, appreciate you. Appreciate everybody trying to something different here, and Jackie's very well respected in her field, so we're honored to have you on and kind of kick this thing off for us. So thanks, Jackie.